I am Thomas Brennan. I'm 67 years old, and 3 days ago, I stood in the rain watching them lower my wife of 42 years into the ground at Oak Hill Cemetery in Napa Valley. But before the minister could finish his benediction, my son Kevin grabbed my elbow, pulled me aside, and said in a voice just loud enough for me to hear, "Dad, I need the house keys. The realtor's coming tomorrow morning to appraise the property. You can stay at the motel in town for now." I looked at him. This man I'd raised, this boy I'd taught to ride a bike, to throw a baseball, to tie a necktie. He was wearing a black suit that probably cost more than my truck, and his eyes were checking his phone while his mother's casket was still visible above the open grave. "The motel," I repeated quietly. "Just temporarily," Kevin said, putting his phone in his pocket but keeping his hand there like he might need to pull it out again any second. "Look, Dad, I know this is hard, but Mom would want us to be practical. The vineyard property is worth close to $8 million. We need to move fast before the market shifts. He said we like this was a partnership. Like he hadn't just told his father to pack a bag and leave the home where his wife had died 5 days ago. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't even raise my voice. I just reached into my coat pocket, pulled out my keys, and held them out to him. Kevin blinked. He actually looked surprised. He'd been ready for a fight, for tears, for the broken old man routine. Instead, I just stood there in the rain with my hand extended, offering him exactly what he'd demanded. You're okay with this?" he asked. "What choice do I have, son?" I made my voice tired. Defeated. "You're right. Margaret would want us to be practical." He took the keys. His fingers were warm and dry. Mine were cold and wet from the rain, and I let them shake just a little as I pulled my hand back. "Thanks, Dad," Kevin said, and I heard the relief in his voice. "This is the right move. Trust me. We'll split everything 50-50, just like Mom would have wanted." I watched him walk back to the small crowd of mourners, already texting someone. Probably Rachel, his girlfriend of 6 months, the real estate agent who'd been asking about the property since their second date. I turned and looked at Margaret's casket one more time. The flowers on top were already starting to wilt in the rain. Yellow roses, her favorite. I'd known her since we were both 22 years old. We'd built everything together. The vineyard, the winery, the life that Kevin thought he could sell off like a used car. "I'm sorry, love," I whispered, "but I need you to be patient with me just a little longer. I promise I'll make this right." Then I walked to my truck, drove to the Napa Valley Inn, and checked into a room that smelled like lavender air freshener and old carpet. I set my small overnight bag on the bed, pulled out my phone, and made a call to a number I hadn't dialed in almost 30 years. "Sullivan and Associates," the receptionist answered. "How may I help you?" "This is Thomas Brennan," I said. "I need to speak with Diane Sullivan. Tell her it's about the Brennan Family Trust." There was a pause. Then, "Please hold, Mr. Brennan." 15 seconds later, Diane's voice came through the line. Sharp, professional. The same voice that had helped Margaret and me set up our estate planning back in 1996. "Thomas," she said, and I could hear the sympathy underneath the business tone. "I heard about Margaret. I'm so deeply sorry." "Thank you, Diane." I sat down on the edge of the motel bed. "I need your help. My son just asked me to leave my house so he can sell it." Another pause. Then, in a voice that could cut glass, "Did he now?" I told her everything. The demand at the funeral, the keys, the realtor appointment tomorrow morning, Kevin's assumption that he and I would split everything 50-50. When I finished, Diane was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, colder. "Thomas, do you remember what Margaret told you when you first started the vineyard?" "I did. Of course I did." She said, "Never put anything in your own name that someone else might try to take." "That's right," Diane said. "And did you listen to her?" "Every single time." "Then let me ask you something. Does Kevin know about the trust?" Margaret tried to explain it to him once. He said it was boring legal stuff and walked out of the room. I heard what sounded like papers shuffling. "Thomas, I'm looking at the trust documents right now. The Brennan family vineyard, the house, the land, the wine inventory, the equipment, all of it is held in an irrevocable trust. You and Margaret were co-trustees. Now that Margaret has passed, you're the sole trustee. Meaning? Meaning Kevin doesn't own anything. He can't sell anything. He doesn't even have the legal authority to step foot on that property without your permission. And if he tries to sell it, he's committing fraud. I felt something cold settle into my chest. The same feeling I'd had 5 days ago when the highway patrol knocked on my door at 2 in the morning. The same feeling that told me something wasn't right about Margaret's accident. Diane, I said slowly, there's something else. Something I need you to look into. What is it? Margaret's car accident. The police said she lost control on Highway 29, hit a tree. But Margaret drove that road every day for 20 years. She knew every curve, every bump. Thomas. Her brakes failed, I continued. That's what the report said. Complete brake failure. But we just had the car serviced 2 weeks ago. I have the receipt. Diane was quiet. Then, what are you telling me? I'm telling you that my wife was careful. She was cautious. And 2 days before she died, she told me she thought someone had been in the garage. Said she'd found the door to her car standing open one morning when she knew she'd locked it. Did you report this? She told me I was being paranoid. Said she probably just forgot to close it, but now I looked out the motel window at the rain. Now my son is trying to sell property he thinks he inherited. Property that's worth $8 million. I could hear Diane's pen scratching on paper. I'm going to make some calls. Don't do anything. Don't confront him. Don't go back to the house. Just stay where you are. For how long? 48 hours, she said. Give me 48 hours. I spent those 48 hours in that motel room, watching the rain fall on Napa Valley and thinking about my wife. Margaret had been the smart one, the organized one. While I'd been working at the accounting firm, she'd been building our future, buying land when it was cheap, planting vines, learning the wine business from the ground up. By the time I retired at 55, she'd turned our small property into one of the most respected boutique wineries in the valley. We didn't produce much, maybe 3,000 cases a year, but what we produced was exceptional. Wine critics loved us. Collectors sought out our vintages. And Kevin? Kevin had never wanted anything to do with it. He'd gone to business school, got a job in San Francisco doing something with tech startups, and only came home when he needed money, which was often. Margaret had been heartbroken. He's our only child, she'd said once, tears in her eyes. Why doesn't he want to be part of what we built? Because he didn't build it? I'd told her. And he doesn't respect things he didn't build. Now, sitting in this motel room, I wondered if Margaret had known, if she'd suspected what Kevin was capable of. On the second day, Diane called. I have news, she said. You need to sit down. I was already sitting, but I gripped the phone tighter. What did you find? First, the good news. I filed an emergency motion with the court to prevent any sale of the vineyard property. Kevin showed up this morning with Rachel Montgomery, his girlfriend, and 2 representatives from a real estate investment company out of Los Angeles. They were shocked when my paralegal served them with the injunction. And the bad news? Thomas. Her voice softened. I had a private investigator look into Margaret's accident. He examined her car. The brake lines didn't just fail. They were cut. Deliberately. Someone used a blade to score them, so they'd rupture under pressure. The room spun. I'd suspected. Of course I'd suspected. But hearing it confirmed was different. There's more, Diane continued. My investigator pulled Kevin's phone records. The day before Margaret's accident, Kevin called a mechanic in Oakland, a man named Tony Ritchie, who served time for insurance fraud in 2019. They spoke for 17 minutes. Can you prove what they talked about? Not yet. But Ritchie's been questioned twice before in connection with staged accidents. And according to his bank records, Kevin paid him $5,000 in cash 2 days before your wife died. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My son, my boy. Thomas, there's one more thing. Kevin's girlfriend, Rachel. She's not just a realtor. She's a real estate agent who specializes in estate sales. Quick liquidations. Her commission on an $8 million property would be close to $500,000. They planned this together. It appears so. And they had no idea about the trust. They thought if Margaret died, everything would pass to you and Kevin as her heirs. Then Kevin would convince you to sell, or just wait until you died too. How long? I asked. How long were they planning this? Text messages between Kevin and Rachel go back 7 months. The earliest one I found says, "Once she's gone, we're set for life." 7 months. While Margaret was alive. While she was making him dinner when he visited. While she was asking me why our son didn't call more often. "What do we do?" I asked. "We go to the police. I've already contacted the Napa County Sheriff. They're opening a murder investigation. But Thomas, I need you to prepare yourself. This is going to be hard. Very hard." "I understand." "Do you?" "Because your son is going to fight. He's going to claim you're a bitter old man trying to frame him. He's going to say you never accepted Rachel. He's going to make this ugly." I thought about Margaret. About the way she'd smiled every time she saw a new vine starting to bud. About how she'd hold my hand when we walked through the vineyard in the evening. About how she'd trusted our son. "Let him try," I said. The sheriff's department moved faster than I expected. Within 24 hours, they had search warrants for Kevin's apartment, his phone, his computer, and his bank records. They brought in Tony Ricci for questioning. Ricci broke on the second day. Facing accessory to murder charges, he confessed everything. Kevin had hired him to cut Margaret's brake lines, paid him $5,000 in cash, told him exactly when to do it. Right after Margaret's Tuesday morning meeting with the wine distributor, when she'd be driving home on Highway 29 at dusk. The highway patrol had thought it was just an unfortunate accident, an older woman who'd lost control on a familiar road. They hadn't looked close enough, because they'd had no reason to suspect foul play. Now they were looking very closely. Kevin and Rachel were arrested on a Thursday morning. I know because Mrs. Chen, our neighbor who lived 3 properties down, called me the moment the police cars pulled up to the vineyard. "Thomas," she said, her voice shaking, "there are 4 sheriff's vehicles at your house. They're putting Kevin in handcuffs. That girlfriend of his is screaming something about her lawyer." "Thank you, Helen," I said quietly. Are you coming home?" "Soon," I told her. "Soon." But I didn't go home. Not yet. I stayed in that motel room, and I waited. Kevin made bail the next day. $50,000, which I later learned Rachel's parents had posted. He went on the local news that evening. I watched from my motel room as my son sat across from a sympathetic reporter and told his story. "My father," Kevin said, and I noticed his voice cracked perfectly on cue, "has never forgiven me for not wanting to work in the wine business. He wanted me to give up my career, my life in the city, to come make wine in Napa. When I chose my own path, he never forgave me." The reporter leaned forward. "And now he's accusing you of murdering your mother?" "It's insane," Kevin said, shaking his head. "My mother died in a car accident. A tragic, horrible accident. But instead of grieving together, my father is using his money and his connections to destroy me. He's always been controlling, always had to be in charge. And now that my mother isn't here to mediate between us, he's finally showing his true colors." "What about the evidence? The cut brake lines?" Kevin looked straight into the camera. "My mother's car was old. Things wear out. But my father can't accept that. He needs someone to blame. And I'm the easy target. And the mechanic who confessed to cutting the brake lines? I've never met Tony Ricci. I've never spoken to him. My lawyer believes he's been pressured by the police to lie. They promised him a reduced sentence if he implicated me." I turned off the TV. Diane called 30 seconds later. "Did you see it?" she asked. "I saw it. He's playing the victim, making you look like a controlling father who's using the justice system for revenge." "I know. Thomas, this is going to get worse before it gets better. Kevin has money for good lawyers. Rachel's family has connections. They're going to fight this hard." "Let them fight," I said. "Do we have enough evidence?" "The phone records, the texts, Ricci's confession, the forensics on the brake lines, the financial motive." She paused. "Yes, we have enough. But it's going to be a battle." The trial took place 6 months later. 6 months of Kevin on the news, in the papers, on local talk radio, claiming he was innocent, claiming I'd hated him his whole life, claiming Margaret had been afraid of me. That last one almost broke me. Margaret had never been afraid of anyone in her life, but I stayed quiet. I didn't give interviews. I didn't respond to Kevin's accusations. I let Diane handle everything, and I spent my days back at the vineyard, walking through the rows of vines Margaret had planted. The prosecution's case was devastating. They presented the phone records showing 17 calls between Kevin and Tony Ricci in the weeks before Margaret's death. They presented the bank records showing the $5,000 cash withdrawal the day before the murder. They presented text messages between Kevin and Rachel. One text message, sent by Kevin 3 weeks before Margaret died, read, "Just need to wait a little longer. Once the old lady is gone, Dad will be easy to handle. He'll probably drink himself to death within a year anyway." Rachel had responded, "I have buyers ready. We can flip the property in 90 days. Cabo by Christmas?" The defense tried everything. They claimed the texts were taken out of context. They claimed Tony Ricci was lying to save himself. They claimed I was a wealthy, powerful man who'd manipulated the entire investigation. Kevin testified in his own defense. Wearing an expensive suit and his most sincere expression, he told the jury about his difficult relationship with his controlling father, about how I'd never accepted his life choices, about how I'd probably cut the brake lines myself just to frame him. "My father," Kevin said from the witness stand, tears streaming down his face, "is a vindictive man who couldn't stand that I didn't want to be like him. And now he's taking the one thing I have left of my mother, her memory, and he's destroying it." The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Lisa Huang, barely waited a beat before she stood up for cross-examination. "Mr. Brennan," she said, "you testified that you loved your mother. Is that correct?" "Of course. And yet you haven't visited her grave once since the funeral, have you?" Kevin hesitated. "I've been dealing with these false accusations. The cemetery is 10 minutes from your apartment. The charges against you weren't filed until 3 weeks after her death. So where were you during those 3 weeks?" "I was grieving privately." "Were you?" Lisa pulled out a piece of paper. "I have credit card receipts showing you went to Las Vegas 2 days after your mother's funeral. You spent $3,000 at the Bellagio Casino. You posted photos on Instagram with the caption, 'Sometimes you gotta live life.' Is that your idea of private grieving?" The courtroom went silent. Lisa wasn't done. "Let's talk about your relationship with your mother. You testified that you were close. Is that true?" "Yes." "How often did you call her?" Kevin shifted in his seat. "I don't know. Regularly. Phone records show you called your mother 4 times in the 6 months before her death. 4 times. Is that your definition of regularly?" "I was busy. Too busy to call the woman who, according to her friends, talked about you constantly." "Who kept every birthday card you'd ever sent her? Who told everyone she knew that she wished you'd come home more often?" "Objection," Kevin's lawyer said. "Relevance?" "Sustained," the judge said, but the damage was done. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. When they came back, Kevin's face was pale. Rachel was crying in the gallery behind him. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Kevin Michael Brennan, guilty of murder in the first degree." Kevin's head dropped. Rachel sobbed. The bailiff moved to take him into custody. As they led him past the prosecution table, Kevin looked at me. Really looked at me for the first time in months. "I hope you're happy," he said. "You finally got what you wanted. I'm out of your life." I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 67 years. "Kevin," I said quietly, "I never wanted you out of my life. I wanted you in it. But I wanted you to be a better man than this. Your mother wanted that too." He looked away. They took him out of the courtroom in handcuffs. The judge sentenced him 3 weeks later, 25 years to life. Rachel took a plea deal. Accessory to murder. 15 years. She testified against Kevin, which reduced her sentence, and her real estate license was revoked permanently. I should have felt something. Relief, justice, satisfaction. But sitting in that courtroom, watching my only child led away in shackles, I just felt empty. I didn't go home right away. I couldn't face the vineyard, the house, all the memories of Margaret. I stayed in a small apartment in town for 2 months. I read, I walked, I tried to figure out what came next. Finally, on what would have been our 43rd wedding anniversary, I drove back to the vineyard. It was early morning, and the fog was still hanging low over the vines. Everything was exactly as Margaret had left it. The roses she'd planted along the driveway, the bench under the oak tree where we used to sit in the evenings, the tasting room with its careful rows of bottles. I walked through it all slowly, letting the memories wash over me. In the house, I found her office untouched. Her desk still had her reading glasses on it. Her calendar still showed appointments she'd never make. And in her drawer, I found a letter. It was addressed to me, dated 2 weeks before she died. My hands shook as I opened it. "My dearest Thomas," it began. "If you're reading this, then I was right to be worried. I hope I'm wrong. I pray I'm wrong. But I need you to know some things. I know Kevin is planning something. I found searches on his laptop when he was visiting last month. How to contest a will, breaking an irrevocable trust, property value, Napa Valley. I think he's going to try to take the vineyard. I think he might try to hurt us to get it. Thomas, I need you to promise me something. If something happens to me, if I'm right about this, I need you to fight, not for revenge, not for anger, but because this vineyard represents something important. It represents what we built together. It represents love and work and patience. Don't let him destroy that. Don't let greed win. And when it's over, when justice is done, I want you to do something for me. I want you to turn this place into something that helps people, young people who need a chance, who need someone to believe in them. Give them the opportunity Kevin threw away. Give them the chance to build something beautiful. I love you. I always have. I always will. Margaret." I sat at her desk and cried for the first time since the funeral. Great, heaving sobs that shook my entire body. But they weren't tears of grief anymore. They were tears of understanding. Margaret had known. She'd known, and she'd trusted me to do the right thing. The next morning, I called Diane. "I want to set up a foundation," I told her, "for young people interested in agriculture, viticulture, sustainable farming. I want to turn the vineyard into a teaching facility." "Thomas, that's a wonderful idea, but the Brennan family vineyard will continue to produce wine. But now, it will also train the next generation of vintners. Kids who come from difficult backgrounds, foster youth, kids who need a second chance." "Margaret would love that," Diane said softly. "I know. She told me to do it. We called it the Margaret Brennan Center for Agricultural Education. Every year, we accept 20 students into our program. They live on the property, work in the vineyard, learn the wine business from the ground up. They learn about soil chemistry, fermentation, marketing, business management. And every year, at graduation, I read them Margaret's letter, the part about not letting greed win, about building something beautiful. Some of them cry. Most of them do, actually. They understand what it means to be given a second chance. Kevin is eligible for parole in 2044. He'll be 61 years old. He writes to me sometimes from prison, short letters about how sorry he is, how he never meant for things to go so far, how he wishes he could go back and make different choices. I don't write back. I can't. Not yet. Maybe someday. But right now, the wound is too fresh, even years later. What I've learned from this nightmare is something Margaret tried to teach me our whole marriage, that patience isn't passive. It's active. It's choosing to wait for the right moment. It's trusting that truth will come to light. Greed is loud. It demands. It takes. It thinks it can have whatever it wants, whenever it wants it. But justice is quiet. It watches. It gathers evidence. It waits for the perfect moment. And when it speaks with a voice that cannot be ignored. My son killed his mother for money he didn't understand and property he could never have owned. He underestimated a father he thought was just a boring old accountant. He didn't know that the boring old accountant had been watching, planning, waiting. And he didn't know that his mother had been smarter than all of us, that she'd seen it coming, that she'd prepared for it, that she'd trusted her husband to make things right. Every spring, when the new vines start to bud, I walk through the vineyard with our students. I tell them about Margaret, about her vision, about her patience, about how she turned a small piece of land into something that would outlast all of us. And I tell them the most important lesson she ever taught me. The people who truly win aren't the ones who grab the most. They're the ones who build something worth keeping. Thank you for listening to my story. Now, I have to ask you, have you ever been underestimated by someone who thought you were weak? Have you ever had to fight for something you loved? What would you have done in my position? Share your story in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from. Your words remind me that even in our darkest moments, we're never truly alone.